kneel at her bed. Her face going pale, her breaths drawing short. Every small breath, her eyes are fading. My little girl, for 12 years, 12 years, she would run and laugh and prance around in jolly. Never would I ever think that she would be struck down in this way. Every breath may be my last moment with her. My little girl, my sweet little girl.
Unclean, unclean. One word. They didn't know. They didn't know what I had to do. They didn't know how hard I had tried. They didn't know how much I wanted that curse gone from me. 12 years since it began. A discharge of blood that had never ceased. The pain it had cost. My whole life taken from me, spent on physician after physician, doctors after doctors. None of them could help. Things only got worse. Hardly anybody would come near me, let alone talk to me. I was spiritually unclean. I couldn't enter the temple, and nor would anyone make contact with me. They wouldn't even come near me. I sold everything to get help, but I was still falling further and further into poor health, and my years were being limited quickly. There was nothing I could do. And yet, there was these tales, stories of a man, a teacher, who was passing through, a man who was healing people. News had broken out that he had recently passed over the lake and that he would be returning soon. One last chance, my only last chance.
I run for the sea, and I can see this great crowd gathering around the water's edge with their boat approaching from the distance. As they came off the deck, the people moved in towards him. I fought my way through the crowd until I reached the front, and then he saw me. I fell to my knees, and I cried out, begging him, please, please, my daughter, she is about to die. Come and be with her so she may be healed. My heart stopped. My only daughter's life now resting on whatever words would come out of this teacher's mouth next. Come, he said, let us go. Thank you. I leapt to my feet and led him towards my house, and he grabbed a few of his disciples to come with. On the way, the people pressed around him, slowing us down greatly. I feared the worst. By the time we arrived, my daughter, she would have passed. But the people didn't stop, pressing and thronging and blocking. And
See him just up ahead, walking up with the ruler of the synagogue, Jairus. Thought it strange, for Jairus seemed quite distressed over something. Regardless, I could see him, only mere meters away. I fought through the people, pushing and jolting. I didn't know if I was going to be able to reach him. I pushed further and further until he was only a mere few meters away. Oh, but the crowd was so rampant and crushing around him. I said to myself, if I can just touch his garments, I will be made well and live. So with one last effort, I pushed forward and stretched out, and I could feel my finger just catch his robe.
he stopped dead in his tracks. I didn't know what had happened, nor why he had stopped so suddenly. He turned around and called out to the crowd, "Who has touched me?" His disciples spoke to him, saying, "Master, there are so many around you pushing against you, and yet you say, 'Who has touched you?'" But he turned to them and said, "No, Somebody has touched me, for I have felt the power go out from me. And then, looking as if she had been caught guilty of murder, a woman stepped out from the crowd and fell to her knees before him.
I had been healed. I could feel it within me. And yet, I had been caught. Tears fell down my face and fear filled every bone in my body. I opened my mouth and proclaimed to everyone my condition. Nothing could ever describe the shame that I felt in that moment, that the whole city now knew of the unclean state I had been in. But he had fixed me when no one else could, and he made me clean again. He looked at me, and I could barely bring myself to meet his gaze. Then he said to me, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Be peaceful and go."
The woman, struck for words, looked at him as if she had just been saved from the dead. Yes, I thought, this man is true to what the people say, and he is able to heal. But just as that moment, a servant of mine came rushing over. As he did, I felt my heart drop into the bottom of my stomach. "Your daughter is dead." Why trouble the teacher any further? Let him go. Overhearing us, the teacher said, "Do not fear, only believe." And he grabbed 3 of his disciples, and we went to my house. When we arrived, I could hear the mourning and wailing inside. And I knew that she was in there. When we entered, Jesus went before the household and called out, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? For she is not dead, only sleeping." Sometimes when you're that overwhelmed with fear or shock or sorrow, you laugh. And that's what they all did. They laughed. I thought to myself, surely not. This man was our only hope. So he ordered them outside and took myself, my wife, and 3 of his men into her room. And there she was, asleep. And he kneeled down by her, took her cold hand, and spoke, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And she woke up and walked, just like she used to.
Thank you, Sage, and thank you, Petra, for giving us that insight into our Bible passage this morning. It's powerful when you actually see it presented that way, and you can kind of feel like you're actually there in the moment when both Jairus and the woman with the issue of blood had their encounters with Jesus. So thank you again. Good morning, TeenStreet. How are we? Happy Wednesday to you. Just going to leave this right here. There we go. There. We're either going to be celebrating tonight or we're going to be commiserating tonight. We'll see. All right. Where are my heroes at? Men Shed? How you guys going? You awake? You are forever my TeenStreet heroes of 2019. I appreciate you guys more and more when I hear the stories of how you are living, the circumstances in which you are living. So thank you again on behalf of every single female in this room. All right. So what I'm going to, and Callum's going to come up a little bit later, what I'm going to do is we're just going to unpack the two characters that we saw portrayed here by Petra and by Sage. And I'm going to look at the character and the reality for the woman with the issue of blood. And it is really awesome that in our Bible, we are spending our time this week in passages in Luke, but there's also other gospel accounts that can give us another view or another flavor of the story in which of what when Jesus encountered people. And I'm just going to read the account that Mark has given us of the woman with the issue of blood. So let me just turn. It's in Mark chapter 5, verse 25 through to 34. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and the woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. She heard about Jesus. She came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touched his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that the power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" You see the people crowding around, the people crowding against you, his disciples answered, "And yet you ask, who touched me?" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Whenever I read the gospel accounts of this woman, my heart always goes out to her. The Bible states that this woman had been burdened with this particular illness for 12 years. 12 years of loneliness. And in this moment, as she encounters Jesus, her private affliction became a matter of a public record. Her particular illness is obviously one that the ladies in the room this morning may have a better insight into. But be assured, her illness was one of a deeply personal nature. And not only did it isolate her socially, but it would have pulverized and pulled into question significant parts of her identity as a woman. Her isolation would have been felt because the Jewish customs of the day held to the law that contact with blood made a person unclean. That would mean that every cup she handled, every chair she sat on could transmit her defilement to others. Even though her impurity was considered a ritual matter rather than an ethical one, it had rendered her an outcast, making it impossible for her to live with a husband or to bear any children. The very essence of her womanhood was jeopardized because Jewish life in the day held a strong focus and ideology in the unit of the family. And Jewish women would have felt the societal expectation to become wives and mothers to carry on their traditions. Yet this woman found herself in a situation that threatened her ability to do so. The doctors and the physicians of the day weren't any help either. They took advantage of her desperate situation, as it is noted in Mark's account, where it says in verse 26 that she suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors. She would not only have walked in the shame of her circumstance, which would have left her emotionally weak, But for someone to be bleeding continuously, as she did for 12 years, she was probably significantly physically weak as well. This was the woman's sorrow. Yet, an encounter with Jesus didn't leave her in that sorrow. What doctors couldn't do, Jesus could. With just a soft touch, loving touch of Jesus' coat, the woman was cured immediately, freed from the wretchedness of her ailment. Yet there was something even more that Jesus did for her beyond her incredible healing. Just consider after walking 12 years with her illness, there was plenty about this woman's life that was broken. A broken body, broken dreams and hopes, broken relationships. Today we are focusing on Jesus being the ultimate restorer. And in Jesus' closing words to her, he referred to this woman not as woman or as lady, but he referred to her as daughter, a term that infers closeness, intimacy, inclusivity, acceptance, belonging, family, love, being cherished, being treasured, being looked after. All of the things that her life had been without for 12 years. The woman with the issue of blood encountered Jesus, and this was her joy.
So, in contrast to this woman that we've seen portrayed here this morning so beautifully and clearly, we're given another character, a man named Jairus. And these pictures, these illustrations, or these characters, we're intentionally given details to hold them in contrast. So if you remember, the woman was bleeding for 12 years. Jairus' daughter was about 12 years old. So we're given these details to help us see these characters in contrast. And this man named Jairus is introduced as a synagogue leader. Now, I don't know much about Jairus himself apart from what we've read and seen in here, but we can understand his context. Now, as a synagogue leader, he would have been a well-respected man in the Jewish community, trusted, admired. He would have been the character that everyone would go to when they had a problem. And he would open up scriptures to them and teach them and tell them about God and about the amazing things that God had done. And so you can imagine the person who everyone came to when the person that usually had all the answers is faced with a situation that is so above their experience and so outside of their box. Where do they turn to? Who do they go to? And we see Jairus turn to the right person. The man who had all the answers went to the answer. The man who everyone would come to went to the right person. And so Jairus, the well-respected leader, ran and threw himself at Jesus' feet. And that's a clear picture for us that Jairus was humble. He acknowledged the healing power and the acknowledgement of Jesus' authority in this environment, in this setting. But there was this other little snippet that I want to highlight. The man, as they were walking, the man who came from the house with the bad news, he said, don't bother the teacher anymore. Your daughter is now passed away. Your daughter is dead. You see, they acknowledged Jesus
would have power to heal, but they think that Jesus wouldn't be able to do anything now that she's dead. They acknowledge that Jesus had some power, but they didn't realize the ultimate authority Jesus had. And so we're seeing this character named Jairus who went from having the answers to needing to find answers. And he goes to the one who would be the answer, who would be the solution. And that man is Jesus.
So, what we're starting to see here is the deep need within humans. Jairus was this character who was the synagogue leader, greatly respected in the place that he lived. And all of a sudden, we see that Jairus has a deep need that he can't actually fix. And sometimes we forget as humans that we actually have deep needs that are part of being a human. You see, God is self-sufficient. God doesn't actually need anything. He's totally in control. He's sovereign over everything. And but we as creatures, we actually have needs. It's part of who we are. And sometimes maybe you responded last night. You might even think, okay, great. I'm now a Christian. I just got to get on with it. I don't really have any needs apart from my faith in Jesus. So I just stiff upper lip and I'm just going to keep moving forward. But the truth is we still have needs as human beings. And we do actually need to recognize this, as Jairus had to, in his humility, come to Jesus and recognize this. Some of the ways that we as humans are described in the Bible are quite interesting. We are described as sheep. Who knows much about sheep? Okay, they're pretty stupid animals, aren't they? Okay, they have deep needs. They're very vulnerable to attack around them. We're also described as children. We're like children. Children are unable to do much. Like we can't. My wife and I can't just wake up and say, "Look, Luke, you've got it sorted today. We're going out. You know, it's all good," and just leave him at home. You know, we'd probably get arrested. That's neglect. We are like children as well, and we have needs within us. And one of those critical needs that is highlighted in the Bible, which is really interesting, is that even before the fall, you know how we talked about the fall on the first night, when we rebelled against God and corruption entered the world, even before that, there was a need within Adam. Because God said it's not good that he's alone. Because Adam was there and there's all these animals around him, and he's becoming, good friends with them and that type of thing. We love our dogs. Dogs are awesome. Do we have any cat people here? Okay. Pray for you as well. No, cats are all right. It's okay. But he's like, God said it's not good for man to be alone. Adam was actually lonely. Yes, he had God. He had a very healthy relationship with God. It was a perfect relationship. He was able to walk with God. He was innocent. He had not yet sinned. And yet God recognized that there was a deep need for fellowship, for other human connection, and so he actually created Eve. And so we know there are needs even prior to the fall within us as humans. Now, I'm not saying here that every single person needs to get married to be perfectly whole. We know that Jesus himself was single, and he was perfectly secure in his identity as a man. We also know that the Apostle Paul was single. There's many people who have been single and fully satisfied in Christ, but human connection is an absolute need. Human friendship and relationship is an absolute need for us as humans. But something when we talk about needs that I think is a big issue in our culture at the moment. I think this is something for us in the 21st century as millennials, and I don't know what generation you are, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X. You're one of the generations. We're all one big family. That's great. But one of the things that we start to mess up is what is a want and what is a need? Because what we start to do is we start to, the categories of want and need. We start to create wants we put the wants in the needs category, and we start to identify certain things as wants. So really quickly, help me here. I want to know if something is a want or a need. Let's work. Help me out here. I'm struggling. Okay, is this a want or a need? Oxygen. Want or need? Need. Okay. Those who said want, you also need prayer. Because you're probably dead. Food. Food is a need, yes. Coffee. I think there's a lot of people that said need right then. I got that throbbing caffeine headache. No, we thank you for coffee, but it is a want. The internet. Okay, how many people have said, oh, I need the internet right now. I need it. Put it, first world problems. Do we need clothes? We need clothes. That needs to be. And if you said no, we might need to send you home. What about your iPhone or new phone? Again, that's something that we start to say, oh, I just need this thing. And so one of the challenges for us as Christians is actually discerning what we're doing when it comes to what we actually need. And what I think is this is where the Bible helps us greatly, because if you're a Christian here, this is an area that we can really grow in to understand what we actually need. Because when Jesus was teaching his disciples how to pray, he says something really, really interesting. He says in Matthew 6, verse 7, he says, when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, and get this, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. I think this is a really remarkable statement that he's still encouraging us to pray, but he actually knows what we need before we ask him. And something that I've been processing recently is the fact that, do I actually know what I need? Because there's lots of things that I can want, but do I actually know what I need? And one of the things that helps us out to know what we actually need is then that Jesus then teaches his disciples how to pray. It's the most famous prayer, I think, in the Bible, when they asked him, how do we pray? And he says, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And something that I find interesting about this is that Jesus has already said, God knows what you need before you ask him. You still need to ask him for it. But the question I think we need to ask ourselves, do we know what we actually need? Or have we got the needs and the wants confused? And what we can do right here in this prayer is start to understand what our needs are actually. What are the most important things that we need? The first thing that we see from this prayer is that we need God. We need God. You need God. He is the first, the greatest, the most important need that we could have. That's how he begins, talking about God, our Father in heaven. Hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come and your will be done. If we're not praying for these types of things, then maybe we've lost our way a bit. The next thing that he talks about is bread. Give us our daily bread. This is our physical needs. We need food, okay? We need water. We need clothes. We need things like that. So we can ask that is a need. Then he says another need that we need is forgiveness. We need forgiveness because we sin. Yes, we repent. We talked about the white rock just before, but we actually we continue to need to repent of our sin. We need forgiveness. And then he says that we need to then forgive others. Because later on in the prayer, he warns that if we don't forgive, if we hold resentment in our heart, if there's unforgiveness and And you're thinking right now, man, that person, the other day they did that thing to me and I cannot forgive them for that. Jesus warns that he will not, God won't forgive us if we don't forgive. So we both need forgiveness and we need to forgive others. And then he says that we need God's help to overcome temptation. I don't know about you, but I'm reading this list and I'm going, there's a lot of things on my needs list that they're not here. We need God's help to overcome temptation. You know what? We're in a battle. Who was here last year at TeenStreet? We need God's help because we are in a battle. Remember, we talked about the battle. When we wake up in the morning as Christians, we have the world, the flesh, and the devil, and they're against us. And the enemy will come to tempt us, and we need God's help to overcome temptation. And then finally, we need God to rescue us from the enemy. He needs to rescue us. We cannot defeat the enemy without God. And I just wanted to really quickly highlight these things because I think sometimes we need to do a bit of a recalibration of our needs and our wants. And we need to ask the question, yes, you know what I need. Please, God, help me to know what I need.
Awesome. Where are my cat people? Where are my cat people? Yeah? Do we have any dog people? Yeah. Cat people? Dog people? Oh no, this is not good. I have a cat story. Yes, cats. I was in New Zealand. I'm born and raised in New Zealand, and at my house, we would have lots of people come and stay with us and have meals and things like this, and a lot of them were students from a nearby Bible school. That's a tongue twister. Nearby Bible school, and they would come and have morning tea with us, and it was called a family group. And a lot of them were from overseas, from Canada and Germany and things like that. There was this one time that we had a group of students come for one of these family Bible studies that I'll never forget. Before I do that and explain how that all went down, I want to introduce to you my friend, Molly. Molly was our little black cat. Now, Molly was unlike any other cat I've ever seen before. Molly had issues. I don't know what's going on. Demon possession, maybe, something along those lines. You know, Molly had a lot of issues. Anger issues, temperament issues, patient issues, a lot of issues, a lot of needs. And it wasn't good. And because we knew Molly really, really well, we could read her body language to know what she was going to do. So what would happen is that Molly would be all purring, and she would be all up in your grill and purring and waving a tail and everything and loving it. Then at the drop of a hat, I don't know where it came from, then instantly the tail would stop wagging, she would stop purring, and she would just lose it, and she would just start attacking things. It was real weird. There's very little preparation time. So that's Molly. Has anybody ever met a cat named like Molly? Anybody got a cat like Molly? Okay, Molly's not alone. There's a squad. There's a Facebook group, Molly and Friends. So we had this group of students come to our house. Now we knew Molly, but they didn't. And so this Canadian girl, she came to our house and she saw Molly, and she ran over and grabbed Molly and started patting Molly. She's purring, waving tails, all up in her grill, having a good time, and patting her is great. And so we went over to this Canadian girl and says, look, this is great. Molly looks like she's having a good time, but you need to know that Molly's unlike other cats. Maybe there's a lot of other cats like Molly, but she's a bit odd. She's got this thing where all of a sudden she'll snap, and it's not good. She gets upset and angry. And you just need to be aware that Molly is a little bit different. Now, she was patting the cat, and she says, no. I have a special relationship with cats. We have a connection. Can you say connection? Connection. Say it like a British person. Connection. I have a connection with cats. I have a special relationship with cats. There's a crazy cat lady, and it was awesome. It was a bit weird, but it was awesome. So she was patting Molly, and it was all going great. Everyone was sipping tea and having coffee. It was great until Molly's tail stopped wagging. Molly stopped purring. And we could read the signs. It was not good. And we prepared the girl and said, look, lady, it's not good. She's not purring. She said, no, no, no. And she started patting her more furiously. And we're like, just prepare yourself. And all of a sudden, Molly looked her in the eye. She clued in. She gripped Molly. She's trying to hold her. Too slow. Way too slow. Molly looked her in the eye, lunged. No warning. Lunged. Jumped at her face. Grabbed her, sunk her claws into either side of her face. Looked her in the eyes and sunk her teeth into her nose. Ah! It was brutal. And she threw the cat on the floor and ran out the room. She had little drops of blood all around her face. Lots of them, little ones. And it was super brutal. Now, it sounds completely unrelated, but watch me try to tie this back in. You see, some of us, we have genuine needs. Now, it sounds like a goofy story, but she had a genuine need for relationship. She had a genuine need for connection. But the problem comes is when we have a genuine God-given need, but we go to the wrong things to fulfill that need. When we have a need for love and acceptance and community, but we go to the wrong people for that, it doesn't end well. Because the very thing that we go to try to fill the need will turn around and bite us, literally or figuratively. Hopefully your friends don't bite you. But if you're going to your friends instead of Jesus for community, it will come back to bite you. And it is so, so important that we understand what it is that we actually need and that we go to the right thing to fulfill that need. You see, Jairus, he had a need. But for the majority of his life, he had been going to religion. He had gone so used to going to religion that had become the thing that he used to fulfill his need. And the bleeding woman, she had a genuine need. She had an issue that she needed healing from, but she had only gone to doctors to fulfill that need. And so the question that I want us to look at this morning is not whether we have needs, because it's clear. Dan clearly laid out some of the needs that we have, that God gave us these needs, and we have needs in our lives, and that's not a problem. But we need to differentiate those from our wants. But when we understand our needs, we're a little bit closer to understanding where we should go to fulfill those needs. If you are lonely, I want you guys to think about your own life. If you are lonely, who or what do you go to, turn to? When you are confused about life and the answers of life, who or what do you YouTube people's opinions to answer that question? When you are rejected by a friend or by a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're rejected by that person, then who or what do you turn to meet that need for relationship? And what I want to do now is just make a clarity. But I'm not suggesting that we don't go to doctors and we don't go to those things. But what we're talking about is the ultimate need, the ultimate answer to our issues. Who is the one that you ultimately put your faith in? And we understand faith clearly now from, remember we talked about faith being belief, confidence, and trust. Above all else, who or what do you put your faith in? Galatians 4 verses 8 through 9 says this: before you Gentiles knew God, you were slaves to so-called gods. I love that. So-called gods that do not even exist. So now that you know God, or should I say now that God knows you, why do you want to go back again and become slaves once more to the weak and useless spiritual principles of this world? This passage is saying one thing. Back then, you used to do those things. But now that you're a Christian, now that you know God and God knows you intimately, then why are you going back to those things? Don't you know that they don't work? The things we turn to apart from God will ultimately turn around and bite us. And I wanted to invite Sarah to come up and share a story.
Yeah, thank you, Callum. So I'm just going to give you my real life example as to when I had a need and where I went. So I have I had the privilege of being born into a Christian family. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And those of you who are the youngest, where are you in your family? You understand my pain, don't you? Because, and I'm the youngest of 5, so there was like 4 before me that had already kind of found their position. The eldest is usually the one that's sensible, bit leadership-ish, bit, I love my oldest brother, but the dude is like, don't mess with him, and it's his way or the highway when it comes to getting your dinner and all that type of stuff. And then we went down the pecking order until number 5 came along, and I'm like, meh? But if you chat to my older siblings, they're like, Sarah, you got it easy. The youngest one, you've got mum and dad wrapped around your little finger. That's kind of true, because that's one of the gifts of being the youngest, is that the 4 before me had done all the hard work and I was just on easy street. But I had a need in my life that I needed to find my identity, who I was within my family, but also within the world. And I have the line of my family, 2 older brothers, a sister, another brother, and then it's me. And as little sisters often do, to find out who we are, to look at an example of what we need to be, we look to our older sister. And this is my older sister, Beck. And we have a very special bond. She's 4 years older than me, and she's just a remarkable woman, and I do genuinely love and adore this woman. We laugh until we've got no laughs left. But the issue here is that as a youngest version of me, I needed to find my identity. And so I looked to my sister, Beck, and I was looking at everything that she was doing in her life and everything that she was, the pursuits that she was going for, the trajectory of her life. And I looked at that and I'm like, I want that. I want that life. I want to live the life like my sister did. She's the mother of 6 incredible kids. And I'm like, I want that. I want all of that. And so I had this need to know who I am, to know who Sarah is. And I looked to my sister Beck to find that need met. But I can tell you that in doing that, the need was not fulfilled.
The question we want to leave with you guys this morning to think about is, I want you to think about, what are the things that you turn to? Who or what do you turn to fulfill those needs? The community, relationship, connection, affirmation, identity. Because we all do it. We all do it. But we need to be very, very clear on what it is that we turn to. So I'm gonna give you 10 seconds to get yourself ready. And we're gonna go out to shush time now. Just remember that this time is between you and God. Just wait, guys. This time is between you and God. Not to chat. Silent. So take this time really, really seriously. It's really powerful what God can do when He's got your attention. So give Him your attention in this time. So I'll give you 10 seconds to get yourself ready, and then we'll head out.